From K News on December 20th, 2023 comes a story titled, quote, 75 Alaskan rivers turn bright orange, tainting water supply, endangering humans and wildlife. Scientists investigate, end quote. Here's the lead, quote, Alaska's once pristine Arctic rivers are undergoing a dramatic transformation, turning a rusty bright orange color that scientists call alarming, end quote. Skipping ahead, a paragraph in the story from K News brings us this information, quote, the problem is particularly prominent in the Brooks Range, a 700-mile mountain range that stretches from northern Alaska into Canada's Yukon Territory. At least 75 rivers and streams in the area have become tinted bright orange in the past 5 to 10 years, end quote. The problem is believed to be a consequence of thawing permafrost due to climate change. The discoloration is the result of oxidizing iron and sulfuric acid, indicating the rivers are being inundated with high concentrations of heavy metals. The oxidation of minerals in the soil may also be lowering the pH of the river, therefore increasing its acidity, according to an article in Scientific American. The exact impacts of the changing pH levels on the river's intricate ecosystem are unknown, and scientists fear the ongoing issues may lead to leaching of various toxic metals, potentially endangering aquatic life and downstream communities. Not only do fish and wildlife rely on the health of the river, surrounding human populations depend on it for fish and drinking water. An ecologist at the University of Alaska Fairbanks is quoted in the article in Scientific American, quote, this is bad stuff, end quote. Looking at the screen of a sensor he had dipped into a tributary of the Salmon River, he reported that the water was about 100 times more acidic than the river. He said, quote, don't drink this water, end quote. Mind you, this is occurring in the Brooks Range. This is the last frontier in a state known as the last frontier. The Brooks Range is comprised of a 1,000-kilometer line of pyramid-like slopes that separate the northern portion of Alaska from the gray, windy Arctic coast. Writer John McPhee paddled the Salmon River in 1975. He subsequently wrote in his 1976 book, Coming into the Country, that the Salmon River contained, quote, the clearest, purest water I have ever seen flowing over rocks, end quote. 4 years later, a Landmark Conservation Act designated the river a wild and scenic river for what the government called, quote, water of exceptional clarity, end quote, with deep luminescent blue-green pools and, quote, large runs of chum and pink salmon, end quote. An ecologist from the University of Alaska Fairbanks was quoted in the Scientific American article, quote, it was a famous, pristine river ecosystem, and now it feels like it's completely collapsing, end quote. He goes on to state that the same thing is happening to rivers and streams throughout the Brooks Range, at least 75 of them in the past 5 to 10 years, and probably in Russia and Canada as well. According to the article in Scientific American, McPhee wrote about the river in this manner, quote, looking over the side of the canoe is like staring down into a sky full of zeppelins, end quote. That was from his trip in the mid-1970s. Now, however, quote, looking over the side is like staring down into a sky full of thick haze. An hour downstream from where we embarked, a large tributary called Kanaktok Creek was pumping in murky water over orange rocks, turning the salmon green. The next incoming stream was so full of iron that the main stem ran half orange and half green. For the rest of the trip, the river had the color and opacity of pea soup, end quote. In fewer than 50 years, we have collectively transformed this region via climate change. For example, the first investigators to document the rusting rivers were U.S. Geological Survey and National Park Service employees studying how permafrost has altered the Brooks Range. In August 2018, a biologist flew by helicopter to retrieve a water sensor he had left in a clean stream east of the Salmon River. He reported that the bottom of the stream was blanketed in orange slime. He could find no fish or insects. His conclusion? Quote, biodiversity just crashed, end quote. This was from a man who'd been climbing mountains and floating rivers in the Brooks Range for more than 40 years. He was further quoted in the Scientific American article, quote, it's fascinating from a scientific point of view, but from an emotional point of view, it's sad. The alarming thing is how far our human reach is, in a big way, End quote. The scientists investigating the situation in Alaska's rivers have concluded that anthropogenic climate change is responsible for these profound changes. Specifically, according to the article in K-News, quote, the problem is believed to be a consequence of thawing permafrost due to climate change. The discoloration is the result of oxidizing iron and sulfuric acid, indicating the rivers are being inundated with high concentrations of heavy metals. The oxidation of minerals in the soil may also be lowering the pH of the water, therefore increasing its acidity. The exact impacts of the changing pH levels on the river's intricate ecosystem are unknown, and scientists fear the ongoing issues may lead to leaching of various toxic metals, potentially endangering aquatic life in downstream communities. Not only do fish and wildlife rely on the health of the river, surrounding human populations depend on it for fish and drinking water. End quote. A professor of environmental studies is quoted in a relevant article in Popular Science from December 19, 2022. The article in Popular Science is titled, Alaska's Arctic Waterways Are Turning Orange. The professor of environmental studies said, quote, I feel like I'm a grad student all over again in a lab that I don't know anything about, and I'm fascinated by it. I think the pH issue is truly alarming, end quote. Her comment about pH was a reference to the acidity of the water, which is a direct outcome of anthropogenic climate change. The article in Popular Science indicates that, quote, the rusting of Alaska's rivers will also likely have an impact on human communities. Rivers where rusting has been observed also serve as drinking water sources for many predominantly Alaska Native communities in northwest Alaska. One major concern is how the water quality, if it continues to deteriorate, may affect the species that serve as a main source of food for Alaska Native residents who live a subsistence lifestyle. The Wulik River terminates at the edge of Kivalina, a community of just over 400 people, 80 miles north of the Arctic Circle that relies on the river, end quote. According to a tribal administrator, quote, her friends and neighbors fish for trout in the river year-round. The community has seen the water become increasingly turbid in recent years, and some people blame the nearby Red Dog Mine. But the tribal administrator said everyone is aware that the permafrost around them is melting, and that increased erosion is causing the level of dissolved minerals and salts in the Wulik to rise, end quote. The bottom line is that abrupt, irreversible climate change has serious consequences. As stated by Barry Corbin, playing the role of Ellis in the 2007 film No Country for Old Men, quote, you can't stop what's coming. It ain't all waiting on you. That's vanity, end quote. You can't stop what's coming. Neither can I. Earth is in the midst of abrupt, irreversible climate change. As always, how we act here and now is a measure of our character. Let's act as if our actions matter. After all, they do matter to the people in our lives.